Well, hello, everybody. Welcome in. Um, Nearly 3,000 of you have signed up for this workshop webinar. And so we're just going to take a moment to let the waterfall of friends come in, 200 and growing, nearly 300. And just welcome you so much this space. Wait, Tainishi Kiawao, Geisha Giskwai Kapiniskis, bonjour, hola. If I haven't said hello in the language that speaks to your heart, feel free to say hi in the chat. Because of how popular these are, 500 people and counting, the chat is going to be our main communication form today. So please feel free to say hello in that chat. We're going to get to know you a little bit later with a quick poll about who you are and where you're joining from. But for now, that's your way in. We are recording this, but we can't see any of your faces. So just the recording here for you, and it will be sent in a follow-up email for you afterwards. We have a Q&A button for questions, which we will pose as many as we have time for to our fantastic panel, who I'll introduce later. That button's at the bottom there. And also, if any of you can find the more button or the react button, so it's got a heart shape on it, and you can click one of those emojis and let us know you're here so we can feel you. Ah, that's lovely. Look at that. Lots of love coming in. Okay, this is very exciting. I'm going to start sharing my screen so that we can dive in to the beginning. And of course, almost ready. Okay, everybody, if you're new to these workshops, welcome. This is our seasonal round of outdoor learning virtual workshops. It's the winter. We've been doing these for a few years now, and we are so excited at the incredible amount of folks who join us and care about getting kids outside to learn. It's the 14th of January, 2025. We are diving into winter with outdoor learning in the early years, and have we got a treat panel for you? I just had to add this photo. We've got some little ones. One of them is demonstrating the subnivean zone and imitating a little burrowing animal in the snow hill at the schoolyard just last week. But I'm joining you from interior British Columbia, what's colonially known as interior British Columbia. But for the Sinixt people, the people of the bull trout, who've called this place home for thousands and thousands of years, in Inselcheen, their language, it's Skihikan, where the ridgelines meet the water. And I'm grateful to spend time both on those ridgelines and at the water. And winter for me, I've been instructed from my Indigenous elders here, it's the time for storytelling, and it's a time for rest, and it's a time for reflection. And so we wanted to bring many voices to you today to bring their own reflections in this moment. But my land acknowledgement today is to take a second for everyone here, and feel free to share your land acknowledgement in the chat if that feels good to you. But just to take a moment to close your eyes and to visualize a piece of gratitude or a message that you want to send to the land and to the people who've stewarded it wherever you are. And just to take one deep breath with and for and connected to the land. Thank you so much. Okay, and if Indigenous learning is important to you, as it really is to us, we have some fantastic resources and courses coming up. One of them is the Medicine of Stories, which is hosted by the phenomenal Monique Gray-Smith. And our first session's on Jan 30th, and it is with Dr. Robin Wilkimera. And we have these other fantastic Indigenous authors and presenters coming up over the next 5 months. It's 5 hours of absolute joy. You can join us at outdoorlearning.com/event. Also in July, in the summer, we're going to be connecting children to nature through Indigenous teaching. So another online short form course if you want to uplift some Indigenous voices. So here at the Outdoor Learning School and Store, we are so grateful to offer these workshops in collaboration, in partnership with the phenomenal folks at Take Me Outside. And Rachel's here too, working hard behind the scenes.
Hi, my name is Rachel. I'm from Take Me Outside. This photo is making me realize I need to change my photo because I now have a second dog that needs to be included in my welcome and my introduction. I'm joining you today from Treaty One territory, the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, the Innuit, the Dakota, and also the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Manitoba is also the traditional land of the Inishwaak and the Dene people. So I'm here to tell you a little bit about some exciting things that are happening upcoming here at Take Me Outside. Our annual winter challenge is upcoming this February. It is running from February 24th to March 7th. It is free and easy to sign up. We've got prizes, we've got activity trackers, we've got resources from some of our amazing 30+ outdoor learning partners. So you can join us and sign up for this challenge by visiting our website. And it's free and easy to sign up. So we really hope that you will get inspired by this challenge and join us for 2 weeks of outdoor learning.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Rachel. What an amazing thing to offer so many beautiful free resources. We want to remove barriers for everyone getting outside. So this is one of the best ways in for that. Okay. Oh, another cheeky one. And I know two of the three of these stars are joining us this evening as well. But this fall, we're that far ahead. We're planning a walking curriculum for the early years. So if you are getting a little taster in this workshop and are feeling inspired, you can also sign up for that. So we are 2025 is giving big learning energy. Is that how the cool kids say it? Is that what the lingo is? I'm trying to be a cool kid, but we are very excited. And if there's something that's missing, something that you think, I need this, I need support with this, please drop us an email, jade@outdoorlearning.com. And we will be happy to help create something and facilitate for you. Okay, friends. So I'm going to just put a quick poll up because it is really exciting to see who's joining us and what we're up to. So here we go. It says fall, but it's winter now, friends. And so you should hopefully see a region. There's question one, which is what kind of educator are you? And we're kind of, there's limited the number of boxes you can have. So if you do not see yourself represented in there, feel free to drop us a message in the chat to let us know. And if you scroll down right now, we've split where you're joining us from across Turtle Island or North America with a little button for rest of the world. And if you are rest of the world, please share in the chat where you're joining. And Tasha's asked, is everyone's personal audio automatically shut off? It is indeed, because we are in webinar mode. So you can't unmute and chat with us, unfortunately. So if you have a question or you get stuck, drop us a message in the chat and myself or Rachel will support you in getting ready. Okay, I'm going to keep these polls open for just a few more minutes, 3 seconds, even 2, 1. I'm going to end that poll right now. Nearly 700 people here. And I'm going to just share the results with you really quickly. So despite the fact this is an early childhood focus, and that makes up more than half, we have people from all different age groups here, which just tells us how inspiring that learning is. And I do often find that some of these amazing things for younger kids can be scaled up or adapted for the older grades. And then we've got some support people, some guardians, some not educators, just passionate about outdoor learning folks. And we have got somewhere from all of the different spots sharing. So we've got across North America and someone's joining us from the rest of the world. I wonder if you'll share where you're joining us from. But really fantastic. We're so grateful to have each and every one of you, the work you're doing. And just so you know, we've got a bunch of friends. There's a link going into the chat. These are all of our outdoor learning partners, contributors, and consultants that we work with. Who are passionate about doing outdoor learning and providing you with tools, equipment, and resources. So if you get stuck and you're looking for something local, feel free to check out our page and check out our partners because there are people doing phenomenal work. But the time is here. We've been planning this for months and months, and I am so just deeply excited to share. If you're not familiar with the folks who are going to be speaking systematically throughout the next hour, you will soon realize the level of expertise and fantastic efforts that have gone into creating this. So today we're doing outdoor learning for the early years, and I'm going to stop sharing this. and pass it over to our opening. And we're going to start with the incredible Dr. Gillian Judson and Clara Redford, who are going to share with us their work. And Dr. Gillian Judson is an assistant professor in the Faculty of Education at Simon Fraser University. She teaches in educational leadership and curriculum and instruction programs. She's written an enormous number of books, and the latest one is a walking curriculum for the early years. Clara is a teacher in a large urban school in Ontario and the third co-author of a walking curriculum for the early years. She spent the majority of her career learning alongside students. I love that phrase, in the early years. Clara's passion lies in amplifying student identity and lived experiences to extend learning, learn with and from the land, and develop a deeper sense of place. And these two fantastic humans are going to kick us off. And we're going to turn our screens off. And then I'm going to come back on when you got a little 2-minute warning. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Jade. My name is Dr. Gillian Judson, and it is my great pleasure and honor to be here. I'm feeling a bit of nervous energy. I'm excited that we get to go first, and then I can sit back and enjoy the conversation with these great educators. Super pleased to be here with my co-author, Clara Redford. Give a wave there. And sorry, unfortunately, Dr. Michelle McKay, our other co-author, couldn't join us today. So what is it we want to share with you? Well, it was interesting, Jade just talked about taking things and scaling them up for older years. In this case, this project was an act of scaling down. The work we want to share is work on imaginative ecological education, and particularly a project called a walking curriculum. Imaginative ecological education is actually an approach to teaching that I've been exploring since my doctoral work, about 20 years now. And initially my work was for the middle and the high school years and elementary, but I just didn't have that expertise. And so Clara and Michelle reached out a few years ago, who were familiar with the pedagogy and the philosophy and the practice of imaginative ecological education, and said, well, we're early years educators, and can we create and shape a document, a resource for early years? So what's unique about this resource is that it is an imagination-focused practice. So it applies the practical tools that engage imagination, stemming from the late Dr. Kieran Egan's work on imaginative education. What are the features of our imaginations that actually engage our emotions with knowledge and make that knowledge more meaningful and memorable? Now, I know that imagination is super welcome in the early years. Most people think that's where it lives. I would argue that it lives everywhere, but we tend to forget it after the early years. So what are the actual examples? Well, in this work, as Clara is going to describe, we talk about how to use specific tools, stories, metaphors, images with young children through outdoor inquiry-focused practices. Now, before I hand it over to Clara, I just wanted to suggest that if you're interested in that imagination-focused practice, there are some resources available through the Outdoor Learning School and Store. Lots of online free resources available through my blog, Imagine Ed. But the key thing about this is that my work looked at what is required to cultivate an ecological sense of connection with the natural world. In my doctoral research all those years ago, what is required to have our students care for and live differently in a world, live in a way that supports the natural world and the thriving and the flourishing of that natural world. And in a nutshell, we need to imagine and emotionally connect differently. So I would argue, and at the heart of this resource, is that we must imaginatively and emotionally engage with the natural world. We must emotionally connect, because human beings are per-thinkers. We perceive and we feel and we think at the same time. So if we're not, as educators, shaping activities for our students that centralize feeling, we are missing the mark. So this is all about teaching with affective engagement, but doing so outdoors, doing so in ways that develop emotional connections with the natural world. And so that's a very brief introduction to the philosophy and the pedagogy that underlies this particular work. The original work is available through the Outdoor Learning Store, other resources on imaginative ecological education, but I want to pass it over to Clara to describe this particular book and what's in it.
Great, thanks, Jillian. As Jillian mentioned, both Michelle and I were engaged in a walking curriculum, which was Jillian's book that we were inspired by, and began to use that resource to take our early learners outside. And when we started chatting about our experiences outside and then got in touch with Jillian, we thought, it would be fantastic to create a resource that really is focused specifically for our early learners, where the cognitive tools and the imagination piece and the walking could be directly related to their developmental process, to curriculum or program documents, and really engaging our learners in connecting with the outdoors. So we wrote this book in collaboration with Jillian. It's called A Walking Curriculum for the Early Years. It is, as I like to call, pocket size. So we did that on purpose. It's the same size as Jillian's original A Walking Curriculum so that educators can take it with you when you go outside. You stick it with you. You can mark it up. You can add sticky notes. You can highlight things in it so that you can remind yourselves when you're doing any specific walk. There are 33 walks that are planned out in different ways, but each walk has a minds on the walk, as well as a opportunity to consolidate, and then extensions for learning back inside the classroom. This is an overview of what comes in the book, as well as opportunities for thinking about documentation, pedagogical documentation, and some resources. This is an example of what one of the walks in the book looks like. This is the Lovely Unlovely walk. You'll see that the cognitive tool is right underneath the walk title. There's always a minds on element that can help teachers develop some background knowledge with students before you go onto the walk. There's the walk, notice, communicate, and document. There's a consolidation piece, mostly with conversations. We do highlight some mentor texts and those extensions for play that can be happening back inside the classroom. That's it. I don't want to take too much more time. This is where you can get a hold of us on Instagram, X, the Outdoor Learning Store, Jillian's podcast, and Education That Inspires, where you can find more information on imaginative and ecological education. I'm going to stop sharing and come back to everyone. So thanks everybody for coming to this wonderful panel discussion. If you have any questions, we'd love to hear from you at the end when all of the panelists had a chance to share.
Amazing. Thank you both so much. Short, sweet, and exciting, and such a beautiful book. It's so accessible. There's a link in the chat there if people want to engage with it. But thank you so much for your time and energy, and we'll see you on the flip side of the other presentations for a little Q&A. So folks, please use the Q&A at the bottom and or the chat, but the Q&A is the best spot. And here we go. Next in line for the panel of incredibleness, I don't know if that's a real word, but hey, it is now, is the incredible Anne Steers. Anne has a Master's of Education and is committed to educational systemic change through community, through school and through early childhood initiatives. You were the founder of the Juniper Hill School for Place-Based Education in Maine, and you're now an independent educational consultant doing incredible work. You wrote the first chapter of David Sobel's book, Nature Preschools and Forest Kindergartens, the Handbook for Outdoor Learning, which is, you know, a bit of the Bible text, and co-authored the North American Association for Environmental Education, Natural Start Alliance's Nature-Based Preschool Professional Practices Guidebook. Oh, that's a lot of words, but what it does is really show you how you can do best practice outdoors for nature-based early learning. You teach graduate level courses for Antioch University in the nature-based early childhood master's degree and certificate program. And we are so grateful to have you here today. I know that you've got a really seasonal themed offering for us. So please take it away.
Great. Hi, everybody. It's so wonderful to see that there are 727 people here, which is really exciting, which might mean that I win. So just kidding.
Yeah, we're making
I'm
bets
just-
on how many folks would turn up live, everyone, just so you know.
I know. Okay. I'm not really that competitive. So, so here we go. I really, when I was talking a bit with Jade about what I would talk about tonight, I figured, so much, as all of you have seen, so much has changed in the field of outdoor learning in the last 5 years. And it's just really exciting. The book that that Jade referred to, the Nature Preschools and Forest Kindergartens book, I have a little blurry situation, but you can kind of see it. That came out in 2015. And since then, it's just amazing to me how many resources there are, the incredible resource that the Outdoor Learning Store is just on its own, but how many incredible grassroots organizations have just taken up this work. And I just feel so grateful to be a part of it in what ways that I can help. So in terms of beginning this, I wanted to start with a little, a spark, really just lighting the warmth within all of you. We all need to take care of ourselves in the wintertime in order to do the good work of caring for children. And so I have a little story for you. And this is actually from a mentor of mine who was a kindergarten teacher for all of her career and really fought for the crisis in the kindergarten and went before the United States Congress to talk about the crisis. And she really, whenever she talks, she leans up against a table and just tells stories. And I've always aspired to do that. No slides, just captivating an audience. So I've just seen her do that many times, and it's just really powerful. So here's a little story for you, and you can read this poem while you listen. This was a story of a little school in Maine, and there was a day that I can't even begin to compete with where some of you are from in terms of raw winter weather, in terms of cold winds and temperatures. But I think you all know what I'm talking about when I talk about a sky that is swirling with gray and sustained winds of 20 miles per hour and gusting up to 30. That's kind of when like lichen starts getting thrown down from the trees and things like this, and sideways sleet. So it was about it wasn't really actually that cold on the thermometer, but it was very cold with the wind, but not cold enough to bring us inside, which we did have a hazardous cutoff, but it was lower than that day, or it was higher than that day. So this child arrived, and she arrived to doing some grinding of grain. We were grinding some grain to make some warm cornbread. And she ground the grain with her big mittened hands on, and then she was about 3.5 at the time, and she wanted to go down to where the rest of the children were, be at the base of the hill, and she had to get there across a field. So you can imagine for tiny legs how far that was in an exposed, windy situation. She just put her head down. She wanted to go by herself. I could see the other teacher, so we were just waving kids down and having this journey. And she took off all by herself, like head down like a mule pulling a heavy cart. And all of a sudden she looked up at the sky and she threw her hands back, and she looked up with the pelting ice in her face, and she said, "What a beautiful day." And I thought, if there's any inspiration in being able to say, I can't possibly teach outside in this weather, why do I do this? That was it. And it still stirs me to this day. So I hope you get out in wild weather with children, not unsafe weather, but wild weather with children, and can experience that kind of inspiration. But it takes a lot of preparation. The reason I chose to talk about winter pieces today is because the chapter in David Sobel's book that I wrote a chapter of, it's the first chapter in there, and there are a lot of Juniper Hill School stories throughout. But it really is about winter. It's about teaching outdoors in the wintertime. And there weren't a lot of resources then. There were definitely people doing it, but it wasn't like people weren't really talking the way they are now, and just the explosion of the amount of support that there is. So this is a list that a colleague and I had put together for a webinar for for Natural Start Alliance, for Inside Outside Network through Antioch University. And it just really thinking about these things. And I just want to honor the teachers who've sent recipes and who think about tea for kids and who really think about sleep and educating families on the importance of sleep, especially in the winter, and keeping on moving their bodies. So there's just so much to explore in the winter, and it's such a sparky time of year in terms of getting out there to see what's there, see what animals are doing or not doing, to see what the plants are doing, and really experience all of the weather that is there as well. So I have a little something to share with you, and I always think it's fun to go away with a couple little nuggets that you can do on Monday. Well, today's Tuesday, but you could do tomorrow on Wednesday with kids. So it goes like this. And if you can imagine, you're welcome to do this with me. I can't see all of you, but you can hear me. So you stretch your arm way out, put one hand up on the top of your shoulder. And then this is kind of your little sled here. So on this hill, the snow you see. Here's my sled. And here is me. See that thumb? Ready? Ho, down we go. So fast, so fun. Yippee, yippee. And of course, we cross the midline and do it on the other side all over again. And I just think sledding, whether you're doing a finger play like that or out and about with kids on cardboard or on their rain pants on some slippery grass, but you can experiment with this. And I just love doing this at the beginning of the winter season. And then moving into a little bit later on, I just think, we get a little tired of winter here on the Maine coast, which I probably shouldn't say to those of you in Winnipeg, but there's just a way in which it's fun to have a little ritual around chasing away those big piles of snow that are still there in April and May. So we like to do this thing. I do this in many of the schools that I work in now, where lots of pots and pans and noisemakers and things like this. So they sing like this, and you're welcome to just do it with me. It's so fun to hear. It's 7:30 at night. So for me, it's nice to get out a little energy from the day. So if you want to do this with me, you're welcome. Old King Winter, it's time to go. Take with you these piles of snow. You can imagine young children chanting and marching and making lots of noise. And then they gather with some bowls. They can gather some snow in a few bowls together with their spoons that they've been banging the pots and pans with. And they say, melt, snow, melt. Spring will soon return. Melt, snow, melt. Spring will soon return. And so gathering those bowls of snow, bringing those inside to do predictions about volume or what will happen. And you'll hear wonderful, rich words like evaporation and I wonder what's going on, and being able to see it, maybe even take the temperature of it. So it can be a wonderful thing to do. And I just want to offer a few resources. There are so many, and I'm grateful to Jade and your team and everyone at Outdoor Learning Store and everything that's offered there. And these are linked here, but you can take a photograph of this slide and just be able to explore these. There's incredible resources on Antioch University's Inside Outside Network. There's a webinar on teaching in winter there that I did with another colleague, with Amy Butler, who just wrote this amazing book called Educating Children Outdoors that also has amazing references to doing outdoor learning as well. And I'd love, as we close right now, for you to just put in the chat some of the things that you like to do with kids outdoors in the wintertime. So what do you do to get kids outdoors? And you can also include ways that you care for yourself and your kiddos in the wintertime, because thinking about the benefits and the challenges of being outdoors is really important as well. So if you could just populate the chat with your thoughts on activities, that would be great. Thank you all so much, and thank you to the Outdoor Learning Store.
Oh, thank you, Anne. How lovely. I have never made a sled on a slope with my own arm. What a treat. It's the simplest things, isn't it, that really feel they can connect to. So that is wonderful. Thank you so much for being here. We're going to keep things rocking and rolling and sliding and snowing. And if you're here from a place where it doesn't have snow, perhaps sanding or blowing in the wind, who knows? And as Lisa gets loaded up here, I'm going to give you a little description as we go forth and into the next. So Lisa is a registered early childhood educator, has a master's in educational leadership and management from Royal Roads University. You're currently pursuing your PhD in applied psychology and human development, early learning through OISE at the University of Toronto. You've got over 15 years of experience working with families and children, and particularly in leadership. And so really excited for you to join us to talk a little bit about Outdoor Play Canada and all of the other fantastic things you're doing. So please take it away.
Thank you. Yeah, I really like to place myself as a registered ECE in Ontario, Canada. We register with a college into practice. And so everything that I do in this space is with an educator lens. And for me, the reason I like to place that is because sometimes I find in some of the work, especially as we get into professional development or in that extended learning, sometimes that can sometimes get lost. So I'm really excited to be able to share some of the work that I've done with the Canadian Centre for Outdoor Play, which is part of Outdoor Play Canada. I am a professor at Algonquin College, which is in Ottawa, Ontario, and it's also a large goal in my dissertation work in regards to professional learning. And so myself, along with 3 colleagues from the Canadian Centre for Outdoor Play, wrote this framework. This document, this resource is accessible. You can see there's a QR code there at the Canadian Centre for Outdoor Play. It's fully available for anybody to look at and to examine. And I hope that people are inspired by it. This document for us was really one of many projects that we're working with the Canadian Centre for Outdoor Play, but the main focus of it was for us to support people doing this type of work. And in Canada specifically, we're finding that there's a lot of real great interest in this. How we train educators, how we teach educators, how we inspire educators. And so we were finding that there was a lot of different people coming to the table having these conversations. And so when you take a look at the document, you'll see there was many people who inspired this framework. And then the framework was taken to a national consensus. And so what we did was we built this idea of what continuous professional learning could look like. At no way or time was the intention of this framework for us to be telling or putting on to other people what CPL could look like in outdoor learning, but more so taking our what evidence out there already is internationally, and then looking at some of these other programs that we've seen across North America and the world, and saying, what are some of the strongest parts of here? What are the things that we know that early childhood educators and professionals need, and how do we make this accessible? And so we started with 2 very specific viewpoints. One was from a decolonization lens, and another one was from a justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion lens. And when we start talking about outdoor play, a lot of times it leads into nature-based play or forest play, and those are really important pieces. But what we realized and we saw in action, we saw in evidence and research and data, is that the importance of looking at the outdoor from a larger perspective and not only in spaces where children have access to the forest. Outdoor play is accessible to everybody in different ways. And so children who have the privilege of having access to the forest or those nature spaces are really important to acknowledge. But there's many children who live in our urban settings and other rural settings where they don't have the same. And so we are really mindful, like my colleagues today, about talking about the balance of those, because in our acts of decolonization, reconciliation comes in different spaces. Justice, equity, diversity, inclusion also is recognizing that children can play outdoors with meaning, even in urban settings. And how do we do that? And how do we support educators in doing that better? Across Canada, and I know across the United States, training requirements for early childhood educators is very different. Specifically in Canada, every province has a different expectation from maybe a few hours of training to a couple years of training registered with a college. So this framework is to support educators who teach educators. But anybody can use the framework behind it. So you'll see here on this first slide that there's 3 aspects that we look at when we're looking at this outdoor framework. One is active engagement. And this active engagement is looking at things like a commitment to play-based learning. So how do we support educators to support children to build on play-based learning? How do we prioritize the importance of a continuum of play? Continually there's a conversation about play should look like this. It should be child-centered. It should be, inquiry-based. It should be, but there is a continuum in there. And we have some great work. Angela Pyle from the University of Toronto has this beautiful continuum that we highlight in this as well. Embracing outdoor play and learning. So knowing that play and learning aren't separated, but also acknowledging that they have different entities within them. And so really, if an educator is embracing this form of active engagement, they have more opportunity. Supporting those inquiry-based learning, so that can be more of those educator-led pieces, or that building piece of going on what we see from children and what we can continue to that. And then also fostering those experiential based learning. So where children are at space and time and how they build off of that. Something that we realized really quickly is that many early childhood educators have a good, strong foundation of child development. But what we have noticed in training and in data is that we fall often into one viewpoint or the other. So we have some more traditional theoretical lens where development comes from an ages and stages perspective. And then we have more of a critical pedagogy look that says it's maybe not that easy. And when we're looking at a decolonized lens, if we're looking from a Jedi perspective, development has to be holistic. We can't be looking at things from a one size fits all, and recognizing that there can be some universal trends, but there are differences in that. So that is a priority in this learning, and that we encourage people who are building education opportunities for educators to look at these ideas. Obviously, physical literacy. We know when children are outdoors that physical literacy increases and improves, and there's so much data and research out there on that. But building things like health and well-being, being in the fresh air helps self-regulation, it helps executive functioning, it helps, a sense of mental health and well-being. And so wanting to continue to do that. Social emotional growth, again, when we're connected to the land, even if the land is concrete in some nature, getting our hands dirty, breathing that fresh air, sharing space with other people, with nature. I could go on, but those are really important pieces as well. This idea of building curiosity and exploration from a very early age, which many of you already know, curiosity is taken out of children because this opportunity to have risk and to build that resilience is bubbled around children. We don't want them to take those risks. And traditionally, that has been taken out of curriculum and out of our early childhood programs and our school systems. And so we know that when we look at the benefit of outdoor play and how we build in holistic development, we can full circle that as well. The other rooted principle that we developed was this idea of meaningful connections. And this one was something that really challenged us around the table, the four of us who went together, and then bringing this back to our communities. And the feedback over time and again is that we need meaning in this work. And so how do we do that? And this area is something that there's so much dialogue and conversation that I feel traditional early childhood education programs, including the programs that I've taught in, it's really difficult to get into this space because we need to be doing to really be building this more. So this navigating time, what does time look like when we're outside? How do we support educators in recognizing that? How do we nurture the spirit, the heart, the mind, and the body? It's the idea of looking at this connection with land, looking at spirituality, what it is and what it isn't, right? Being present in space and place are things that help us connect with the land that we are part of, the land that we are using in permission with the natural world. And how do we help children understand the histories that they've come from, and then the history and the space and land that they're part of? And so these are really big concepts, but it starts these really neat seedling conversations. And children are magnificent to be able to negotiate these pieces. And we really strip a lot of that. So these seeds specifically for me are ones that I am really eager and excited to see how we promote further and how we can build that bigger in communities. So in this project with the Canadian Centre for Outdoor Play, one of the pieces that we're really excited about was being able to take the framework and apply it, and what do we do with it? And so I did want to share with you that we at Algonquin College have a certificate. It is the Play, Learn, and Teach Outdoors certificate, and it's for early learning professionals who want to go through those four foundations, or the three foundations, and there's 4 courses, and being able to learn more about that. These courses are not a how to do. They're very much about educators and early learning professionals coming to the program and saying, this is what I've done, this is where I'm at, this is my experience, this is my curiosity. And then the information around the framework is then built together as a collective and collaborative. And so we've had one cohort start already, and then we have our second semester starting actually just this week. And so it's a really neat opportunity for us to build off of this continuum and built off of these rooted principles. We encourage other people to use this framework in the ways that work for them. Obviously, you know, my contact information here as well, the Canadian Centre for Outdoor Play, there's contact information. I go back into there is the link is there as well. But those of you who are in this space and want more information, please feel free to reach out. We also have a community of practice that is currently national, and we have educators from across Canada who are eager to share these conversations. So absolutely reach out, and thank you for allowing me to share this with you this evening.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Lisa. And so wonderful to see all these different approaches and talking about our bodies, our minds, our spirits, and all of these things in a holistic worldview, and that is glorious. So thank you so much for bringing that to us. Oh my goodness, it's last but most certainly not least. It's one of my favorite pens to spend time in the forest with. You know, speaker to the birds, friend of all of the beings. It's Jacob Rodenberg, and I mean, a nature sommelier, award-winning educator, curriculum designer, and executive director of Camp Kawartha, which is a summer camp and outdoor education centre, an instructor at the environmental education department at Trent University. You've taught more than 100,000 students, myself being one of them. You're co-author of the Big Book of Nature Activities and the Book of Nature Connection. I feel like the words, like one person just keeps like passing these words and then we keep receiving them. But I'll pass it over to you because I know you're going to have some beautiful, fun things for us to finish with.
Thanks so much, Jade. And how nice to be with everybody. And I'm just going to go back to here. Well, what a pleasure. What I'm hoping to do over the next little while, next 9 minutes or so, is to do a nature connection smorgasbord, show you some activities that you can do with your kids in nearby green spaces, anywhere. And one of the hints that I have is about how do you explore nature with kids, because kids are born explorers. They love to romp, and often you could just let them go, but I've done that once where kids disappeared over the horizon. So you make sure you set boundaries. But a few hints to exploring with kids. One of the things I love to do is say, oh, I wonder what is under that. I call them basement windows. And so I would say to kids, would you like to see a baby dragon? Or how about a shapeshifter? Or how about an earth-boring submarine? And we peek under a rock, or we lift up a log. Sure enough, maybe we'll find a baby salamander, which looks a bit like a baby dragon. Or maybe we'll find an earthworm, which is kind of like an earth-boring submarine because it can plow through the earth and it aerates the earth. Its poo creates frass and it fertilizes the soil. And a shapeshifter is a pill bug because it'll roll up into a pill if it's in danger. But you can have fun with that. We'll sometimes take the kids to a nearby pond and say, do you want to see an underwater jet-propelled jaw-thrusting bug snatcher? I mean, who wouldn't? And so we scoop up some mud, and in the ooze, we'll find a baby dragonfly. And they're pretty incredible. They're jet-propelled because they take water in through their mouth and they shoot it out their rear end. So they're jet-propelled. They have this folding jaw called a labium with claws on it. So they catch little bugs or even minnows. And yeah, they're a bug snatcher. You can have fun with that. An insect-gobbling wood slammer, a wind-soaring acorn cruncher, a green-faced, sweet-smelling suncatcher. Maybe you can come up with some of your own ideas. The insect-gobbling wood slammer is a woodpecker, wind-soaring acorn cruncher, a flying squirrel, a green-faced, sweet-smelling suncatcher, a cedar tree, or another kind of tree. Have fun with that. I created something called exploration dice. And I just took some pieces of wood, and on one section I drew on directions, on the other I drew numbers, and we roll the exploration dice, and I'll have a compass, and it says go west, 12 steps. So we will all turn to the west, we'll go 12 steps, and then we'll hunker down, and sure enough, kids will discover something. What this does is it bounces us around the landscape to places we normally wouldn't get to and allows kids the delight of discovering. One of my favorite things to do is a micro trail. I hand kids popsicle sticks or tongue depressors with yarn, and just within a few meters, I have them create a little mini trail, a micro trail. And they stick the popsicle stick in at points of interest. It might be a spider's web, it might be a hole in the ground, it might be an interesting looking rock or a leaf, and they connect it all by yarn. And with a magnifying glass, they've created their own trail and they can escort different people along their little nature trail. You don't need much space, and kids will have really sharp eyes and will see things we adults miss. I love using a digital microscope. Here's a picture of cedar that I took. So that's part of the micro trails, just celebrating the joy of the very small. And of course, maybe some of you have done this before, but just creating little mini forts or gnome homes or fairy gardens by using colorful stones, bark, boughs, moss. And kids will use their imagination to create the most amazing little shelters. And here's one that our kids created. If you don't know the work of Andy Goldsworthy, then I recommend you look him up online. He is an artist from Great Britain who goes out into nature and just with his bare hands, he creates the most amazing sculptures. His rule is that he won't use any mechanical equipment. Whatever he creates, he eventually takes a picture of it and lets the natural world reclaim it. So here's some things he's done. He's breathed icicles together to create that. He's torn leaves. There he's playing with pattern and texture, balancing rocks, just showing kids some of these pictures and asking them to make their own nature sculpture is wonderful. I often refer to Robin Wall Kimmerer's work in braiding sweetgrass about the honorable harvest. So really careful about how we take from nature. We practice reciprocity, trying to give more than we take. We don't take the first, we don't take the last, and we always give thanks. Here's a nature sculpture my kids created. You can even isolate bits of nature to see it in a whole new way by gluing popsicle sticks together, creating an empty frame. Kids can show textures and patterns they might not see, or cutting out shapes from pieces of paper and using those. It's amazing how many different colors of green there are. So I have the Green Sheen Challenge, which is a color wheel of different shades of green. And then kids try to see if they can exactly match that color of green. And you'll be amazed at how many shades of green there are. Now, I'm mindful of the time. And of course, Jacob is always a little optimistic about how much he can do. And I only have 2 minutes left, so I have too many slides. But anyway, I'll keep going. Camouflage. Kids are always intrigued by that. There's something called counter shading. If light falls on an object, naturally it's darker underneath and lighter on top. Animals will do the opposite, called counter shading. So that's why most animals like deer and squirrels and rabbits will be darker on top and lighter on the bottom. There's other types of camouflage as well, but what I love to do is get kids to cut out pictures of native animals and then hiding them and having other kids try to find them. Why you can even do the same thing with eggs, camouflage eggs, and have the kids hide those. It's pretty interesting. If they do a good job of camouflaging their eggs, they totally disappear. I use brown chicken eggs because they blend in with the soil. And you can even make bird nests by gathering some mud in the spring, some dried grasses, and shaping them into a nest. And we talk about the different kinds of bird nests there are. And if we can share this slideshow, I've created a bunch of what I call nature notes online, and it describes on how you would make a bird's nest. Natural paintbrushes, where you take different types of material and tie them to the branches, and you can create your own wonderful paintbrushes. Every season has its own signature sounds. And I love making sound catchers or even getting kids to cup their hands and putting them behind their ears and pushing forward. And you can hear all kinds of sounds, from the sounds of birds, the sound of wind through the trees, the squelch of mud underfoot. I made these sound catchers, and you can too. And it's amazing how much better you can hear with these. Do get kids to tune in to some of the cool songs that are out there. I know I'm coming to the end here, and I'm mindful of that. So what I'm going to do is just quickly talk about smells and then end it there. But if you get kids to wet their upper lip with a sponge, you can smell much better. It's because the wetness and moistness of the air helps your olfactory. You just smell better. So we scratch and sniff. We make smell cocktails. It is amazing. Now I realize I'm at the end, so I'm going to just go to the very end here. I'm going to escape out of here. Are you still there, Jay?
I'm here. I'm here for you. I'm just thinking about all of the different ways that I would like to describe the birds, but the bug gobbling wood smacker is just divine. I just can't. I love it. I love it very much. Are you finished with your presentation?
I am, and I realized I went way over time, so I'm trying to stop my
No,
share.
no. We could just have you go forever and ever and ever. And people are asking about all these resources. All of those activities are in Jacob's books. You got to have them. They're beautiful things to have and to hold. The Big Book of Nature Activities goes seasonally as well. And again, in your follow-up email, you'll get links to all these resources. If people have shared links, I'll make sure we get them to you, okay? And when Anne asked for a list of the activities you love to do, we'll also pull that out of the chat and share that with people, because it was really a beautiful waterfall of ideas. But oh, Jacob, what's this? You're sharing with us again?
Sorry about that. I'll stop sharing. But I just wanted to mention that I do have a book coming out in the fall called The Wild Path Home, which I wrote with Kathy Dewick. And this is all about how you can work as a community to raise an earth steward. What do kids need at different ages and stages of their development that activate and empower them to care for the land? So I thought I'd mention that.
Oh, please do. And we'll make sure that link goes out too. And I know that the documentary, which we premiered at the outdoor learning conference that we had in Banff with Take Me Outside, it was really well received. The work that you've been doing is really incredible. Okay, so the panel are back together. We're all here. And some great questions came in, and I've kind of been sort of divvying them up into who I think, I know all of you could answer all of them. But I'm going to start with Lisa. And someone asked, what advice would you give for early childhood educators who are just graduating? They're new, like this person themselves. And what advice would you give in just getting kids outside? They're new to the practice, but they just want to go outside.
I think the most important thing is, because I've been reading through the chats, is that you're going to hit obstacles. And the reality of it is the obstacles are not the stop point. They're an opportunity, as challenging as sometimes they might be, to then find another opportunity to get through that. And so, and I say that because I did read quite a few of the posts about, it being in communities where there isn't access to outdoor clothing, or there's limited access to space, et cetera. And what we're finding is that with the movement that we've seen internationally, that the value of outdoor play, going back to our roots, is that the divide between the have and have not has gotten greater and bigger, because accessibility of good quality of equipment is challenging. With the Canadian Centre for Outdoor Play, we've actually been able to access quite a bit of community-based funding and agencies that have been willing to work with us in different ways to get better quality gear. But being outside, even for a short period of time, is better than not going out at all. And I think that's something that often educators get stuck in, is two things. One is efforts to the effort to get a group of toddlers dressed out when they maybe not have the best equipment. They know they can't stay out for maybe longer than 20 minutes. That 20 minutes is still very valuable. And so it's trying to be resourceful as you possibly can, reach out and build into that community around people, like people around the table today and in other networks, and doing that. And the other one is, and this applies to many things in early childhood, is not always falling into the urban legend or urban myth of we can't go out because. And so I know in each province, there's different legislation in regards to licensed space and temperature we can be outside. But recently in Ontario, I mean, there has never been a set temperature. Minus 27 is when frostbite sets in the wintertime. But educators every year will ask, well, can we be out for like when do we have to be inside? And it's almost like we're looking for an excuse to go in. I am the first to argue that when I was an educator, I would not like the wintertime. And I've lived in Ontario, in Ottawa, and most of my life. But knowing that the benefit of children being out for even a period of time, if that's all that their gear will allow them to be safely, is still valuable. Finding those opportunities when you can, and really making and centering around that if we possibly can, and reading, finding as many free resources as you possibly can to build that momentum. So,
thank you so much. Well, a thoughtful and deep answer. That's beautiful. Anne, I was going to ask you, any resources or ideas, because I know you came in with some beautiful winter resources, but how about on the flip side for folks in somewhere like Phoenix, Arizona, with summer heat, which is getting worse with climate change, sitting around 43 degrees Celsius or 110 Fahrenheit, hot, hot, hot. Any ideas for outdoor learning in the extremes?
Yeah, it's a great question, and something that we're talking about in the Northeast. I'm in Maine, and it's getting hotter, and not like Arizona, but it's just it's unusual, and just extreme weather in general, high winds, which is something we didn't see on the regular. So I think in terms of heat, maybe other people have some specific resources. I know that the Inside Outside Network has put together some pretty amazing resources in terms of weather resources, and really looking at things like air quality and looking at your temperature guides and things like that. But I think it's an area of growth for the field, actually, really looking at ways, because we've done a lot with cold and that side of extreme, and looking at getting ready, but maybe others can add for heat, because I think, at least from my perspective, I think there is a little ways to go there. But there are practitioners that I know and work with, who are doing remarkable adaptations. And again, short periods of time, instead of none at all, but short periods of time, if that extreme heat index allows for that. And then thinking about, obviously, areas of shade, and keeping cool with wet, making sure that you've got handkerchiefs that you can dip into ice water. A lot of places that I know are starting to put in those little sprinkler things like you see in the grocery store, but over play areas. So that's another piece, but maybe some other folks can chime in if you've got a specific resource. But I work specifically with schools now on recreating the weather index chart, which for in the US at least kind of went viral from like the middle part of the country, and somehow that became the thing that everyone uses as kind of the saying whether you go outside or not. So I work with schools to redo that, actually. So, and there's great research at the University of Maine specifically around recess and looking at how cold is too cold, but I'd love to see how hot is too hot from other.
Does anyone want to add on to that, or?
If I could just add one thing too that I think that's important, and I didn't say, is looking at your schedule differently where possible. And I think that's something as early childhood educators, especially, where it's like, well, we do our transition inside, and sometimes that early morning and then later in the afternoon, depending, because I was reading things about even smoke from forest fires and those type of pieces. So sometimes those early mornings, especially in extreme heat, is your opportunity to be outside. So maybe having the transition first thing outside, having morning snack outside, whenever possible, trying to flip things around so that we can get it, because we do get stuck in those routines quite easily as well.
Great reflections. Thank you. Thank you to both. Gillian, I know that this book is related to the slightly older version of a walking curriculum, but someone had asked about playing in the muck and other arty stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And they were asking about how that resource supports the walking curriculum. So I thought I'd dive in, and we'll put a link in the chat for it as well.
For sure. I have a super awesome arty friend here, and she was really into a walking curriculum, and the initial 30 that came along with it, hiding places, mysteries, surfaces, all these different things. And so she is an artist, and she created art-based activities that can help kids draw perspective, actual art skills here. Free drawing being part of it, but really interesting activities to develop their skills. So it's called Playing in the Muck and other arty stuff, and it goes directly with the original walking curriculum.
Beautiful. And I do believe in, like all things, it's scalable. There's some really beautiful basic opportunities for those who are just learning how to take command of a pencil and things like that too. So it could be a good one for some of your older early years. Okay, thank you, Julie. I'm going to keep going. Clara, hey, lots of people, and we know that this is real. Lisa touched on a little bit in Anne too, but you know, we will face barriers, but we'll face folks who are less comfortable outside. But I wondered about if you had some tips from being, you know, a practitioner for years about, you know, making sure that we have appropriate clothing for everyone, or working with those maybe who have some sensory issues around clothing. Have you overcome some of those barriers in your own work?
I think one of the best things to do is start small. You know, when you're starting in outdoor education, you know, there's no expectation that on your first go out, you're going to be out there for an hour with our little people, right? Especially when you don't have any of those experiences to draw from. So the best thing to do is start small. Go for 10 minutes. And it doesn't have to be to some beautiful wooded area. It can be literally a walk around your school, a walk around your school ground. And if you want to take an older class with you, we always suggest that to some of our friends who are getting out for the first time and getting beyond the gates of early childhood classrooms. You know, open those gates and let them out. Maybe take some older kids, some buddies from grade 5 or grade 6 or grade 8, take them with you. Have them hold their hands so they feel safe, our little people, and take them around and have a purpose for that walk. You know, have them look up, have them look down. Just like Jacob was saying, you know, maybe have them look under a few rocks that they notice along the way on the school ground, and bring some of that learning back to the classroom and continue that learning. It doesn't have to be a long time, just a good time. And you'll find out, Michelle and I often say that, you know, when they're bouncing off the walls, remove the walls. And when you do that, it's amazing the change that you will see in our little people. Self-regulation is so different when they're able to be outside in an environment where they're connecting to the land and developing a sense of place.
What a lovely answer. Thank you so much. And we just got time for one more question. It's for you, dear Jacob. And, you know, as someone who gave us all these amazing activities and these engaging things that I know work for groups, somebody asked, we've got kids, they just want a free play. They just want to go. They just want to just leave. And then maybe the teacher or the educator is feeling a little bit overwhelmed with trying to manage. Do you have any ideas for bringing the group together and keeping them connected?
What a great question. My wife, who's a Waldorf early childhood educator, says the real work of childhood is play. So just letting them play, and it's amazing how much they can play on their own. You think about what happens when they're playing. They solve problems, they learn to cooperate, they learn to trust, they learn, just how to be together. And a stick becomes a tent, a sailing mast, magic wand. So their imagination can take flight if you let it. So find some boundaries, give kids materials, and let them play, and they will.
That's magical. And I think that's whenever I've learned from all of the work and the huge body of work that the people in this room have created, is this movement away from like over planning or having these ideas about what learning should look like and should feel like as a sort of my own personal jail. And what I have experienced and from learning from all of you about allowing imagination and connection and relationship with place and the land and the modern human world around me, because I am a genuine learner of all of you, that is where the learning it happens, and then you can reflect on it afterwards. And so deeply, deeply grateful for all of your wisdom, for your knowledge. I don't know if any of you could keep up with the 700 people in the chat saying, oh my goodness, I'm going to try this. I'm going to get this. I'm going to go out. This is amazing. So just wonderful. Thank you so much for being here, each and every one of you. It has been a fantastic kickoff to our winter series. And if you've enjoyed it, we do have more virtual workshops coming up in February. So please go to outdoorlearning.com/events and join us for more of them. Look at that waterfall of love, the reverse waterfall, I suppose, an anti-gravity waterfall, if you will. Okay, I know we're a few minutes over, everyone, but we just want to give a couple of prizes. I've got a couple of $25 gift cards to the Outdoor Learning School store, so you can maybe engage with one of these beautiful resources. And I believe Rachel's got a couple of gifts from the Take Me Outside store as well. Now, I'm going to do it real quickly. I'm just going to do it based on who's still here with us. And so our first winner is Karen Maxwell. Karen Maxwell, you are a winner of a $25 gift card to the Outdoor Learning store. Next person, random scroll, is Mark Woodfield. Mark Woodfield, you're our second winner. Thank you so much. Rachel, should I just keep going? All right, Winona Hapgood. Winona Hapgood, you are a winner of a $25 gift card to the Take Me Outside store. Got some beautiful non-profit and Canadian-made goodies in there. And my last one is Amanda Dobson. Amanda Dobson, you're our fourth and final winner. So Jacob, Anne, Clara, Lisa, Gillian, legends in your field, thank you so much for sharing so much of yourselves with us in this beautiful space with 700 people. I'll get the final number and then we'll see who was closest. I think it might be Anne, though. I think she might be the winner in our personal pool. But to all of you who joined us, thank you so much for dedicating time at the end of your workday or while you're eating your dinner or whatever you've got going on to join us in this space, because this is our heart space and we appreciate each and every one of you. Good night. Thank you so much.